Have you ever had that feeling where you're so certain about something, a spiritual truth maybe, but then you realize that certainty isn't the goal?
Oh, absolutely. That's actually a stopping point.
Exactly. That feeling of, okay, I've got all the answers now, can be the very thing that blocks you from seeing something deeper.
It's a huge paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
We chase certainty because it feels safe, but then you look at history, both scientific and spiritual, and you see that absolute conviction is, well, it's often what comes right before stagnation.
Right. The biggest leaps forward always seem to require someone admitting, hey, maybe we don't know everything yet.
Mm,
And that exact tension, that need to move beyond what feels certain, that's really the heart of our deep dive today.
it is.
We are going to explore a really fascinating and I think pretty radical journey of spiritual deconstruction and reconstruction. It's all led by Dr. Kay Fairchild, and it's laid out in these excerpts from 3 of her articles.
And these sources, they map out what she calls a progressive spiritual movement. It's all grounded in a pretty radical redefinition of identity and, a huge reevaluation of concepts that so many of us grew up with.
Things we thought were just set in stone.
Exactly. Things like sin, judgment, salvation, all the big ones.
And to really get the weight of this, you have to understand her background. I mean, this isn't someone new to this. Dr. Kay Fairchild has, nearly 50 years in active ministry?
Almost 50 years, yeah. She spent 8 years pastoring New Life Ministries in Fort Wayne, and then after that, another 37 years in Portland, Indiana.
So this is not a rookie just trying out some new theories.
No, not at all. This is a deeply seasoned leader who's, initiating a massive change after decades of lived experience.
And that background is just so critical because it tells you this whole movement comes from a place of a weariness with the old models. It's not just rebellion for rebellion's sake.
You see the result of that. This group she has in Portland, it draws people from, and this is a quote, nearly every imaginable denomination.
That says so much. It points to a kind of universal hunger, doesn't it?
It really does. You have people actively crossing these old denominational lines because, and the source material says this, they grew tired of the old ways of looking at things, which produced very little.
And they're looking for something that actually works.
Right. Something that works in their daily lives, that provides real relief and, genuine transformation.
I think so many people are feeling that, the spiritual migration, away from the old institutions.
Well, it's all driven by this one fundamental shift. And this is really our mission for this dive today, to understand it. It's the move away from a performance-based framework.
Where your value is based on what you do.
Exactly. How well you follow the rules.
Yeah.
It's moving away from that and toward an identity-based realization, where your standing is defined purely by who you already are.
That is a massive shift.
It's everything.
But, and this is crucial, we have to talk about the spirit in which she says this has to be done. She has this motto, this rule for the whole process.
Yes. We must not smack the mother which gave us birth.
Right. Don't criticize the old systems, the denominations that, first got you started on your path. The main principle always has to be love.
And that paradox is the kind of the operating system for the whole thing. You have to be willing to take apart your most basic beliefs.
While at the same time holding on to a sense of honor and love for the very place you came from.
It's a delicate balance. And it sets the stage perfectly for section 1, which is where the real demolition work begins, deconstructing certainty itself.
Okay, so let's dig into this progressive movement from the first article. When we say deconstruction here, we're not talking about, small disagreements over doctrine.
No, not at all.
Dr. Kay lays out this incredible list of massive foundational religious ideas that had to be scrutinized, challenged, and in a lot of cases just completely rebuilt from the ground up.
It's a total overhaul of the theological blueprint.
And the list itself just shows you how deep the change goes. I mean, if you take these ideas away, the whole traditional structure sort of collapses.
It really does. She challenged eternal conscious torment.
A huge one.
Penal substitution, the definition of original sin, what it means to be born again, the literal rapture, the literal coming of the Lord.
And the big one underpinning it all, performance-based salvation.
Right.
We should probably pause on those first two, just for anyone listening who might not be deep in the theology. Let's start with eternal conscious torment, or ECT.
Okay, so traditionally ECT is the belief that if you're an unbeliever, you face an everlasting, active, conscious punishment in hell.
Right. It's a core idea in a lot of systems that emphasize the urgency of conversion.
Exactly. And
Okay.
so to deconstruct that is to fundamentally change the character of God. You're moving away from a punitive judge to
Ah.
something else entirely.
Yeah.
It removes that primary fear-based motivation.
Okay, and the second one, penal substitutionary atonement. That's arguably the cornerstone of so much of Western evangelicalism.
It really is.
Yeah.
Penal substitution is basically the idea that humanity's sin created a sort of legal debt to God.
A debt that had to be paid with a penalty.
Right. And since we couldn't pay it, Jesus, as the innocent substitute, took that punishment, that penalty for us. So if you deconstruct that,
You're changing the entire model of the divine relationship.
you're saying it's not governed by legal demands or substituted payments. You're saying it's something inherent, something relational. It shifts the whole focus from like an external transaction to an internal realization.
So the deconstruction isn't just about rejecting specific doctrines. It's really about rejecting the whole mindset behind them.
That's it,
The
exactly.
mindset that says, we've got it all figured out. We have the rules of engagement with the divine.
Yeah. And the article boils it down to this one core mental trap that she wanted to dismantle. It's the erroneous thinking that we have all there is to know about any given spiritual subject.
So it's the deconstruction of certainty itself.
Certainty itself. It's a kind of profound spiritual humility. The source material is very direct. It says we have to hold loosely any truth that's revealed to us.
And that's not about being wishy-washy, right? It's not about saying nothing is true.
No, not at all. It's a necessary mechanism for growth. It's a very active stance.
So how does that work practically? Don't we kind of crave a firm foundation?
We absolutely do, and that's why it's so hard. But Dr. K argues you hold truth loosely for a very specific reason, so that more can be added unto us by Spirit.
Okay.
Think of truth less like a finished statue that you have to guard and more like a seed or a living thing. You might have a great revelation about something today, a huge insight, but you have to understand that you will never exhaust all there is to know about that thing because the subject, the divine, is infinite.
So if you cling too tightly to yesterday's revelation...
You're actually blocking today's deeper insight from getting through.
So spiritual maturity isn't measured by how big your answers are.
No. It's measured by the depth of your questions.
Yeah.
And your ability to, hold seemingly opposite ideas in your mind for a bit.
That completely flips the idea of spiritual mastery on its head.
It does. Mastery isn't arriving at the final, definitive answer. It's about maintaining this infinite curiosity. It's what prevents that spiritual stagnation that happens when a person or a church decides, okay, this is it. We have the final word on this topic.
Which brings us back to that teaching of Jesus, to stay childlike.
Right, and Dr. K redefines what that means in a mature spiritual sense. It's not about being naive or simplistic.
It's about staying spiritually curious. It's a state of constant learning.
And that curiosity has to be fueled by what the articles call an inner excitement to receive more on any area of revelation.
What I found really fascinating was the emphasis on receiving more, even on the things you think you've already figured out.
Yes, even on the areas that have been reconstructed in. So, okay, you've redefined sin as a mistaken identity. You don't just stop there and build a fortress around that new definition.
You have to stay open.
You have to keep asking, okay, what's a deeper dimension of this? How does this mistaken identity play out on a cosmic level? It's a constant unfolding.
It really goes against the academic or even the religious impulse, which is often to, defend a fixed position you've arrived at.
This teaching says the definition itself has to stay fluid, open to more and more input. And that openness is what allows you to stay in a state of awe, of wonder.
The source mentions being comfortable with the unknowing of some truths.
And that comfort is maturity. It's accepting that we're dealing with an infinite subject and we only ever have a finite piece of it. You have to wait actively for what Spirit continues to reveal.
That idea of ongoing revelation is so important. It connects directly to how Scripture is used. We're told to hear what the Spirit saith.
Present tense.
And the source material is really explicit, defining that as what Spirit continues to say to a people, not just what it said 2,000 years ago. It's a live communication.
And this is where the stakes get really high. Because Dr. K argues that if we're no longer desirous to add to what we already know,
we completely defeat our purpose for embracing and promoting the gospel of the kingdom.
it's a devastating consequence when you think about it.
You defeat your whole purpose just by stopping your own learning. Why? What's the reasoning there?
Because if the message we carry is static, if it's frozen in time, it can't possibly reflect the true nature of divinity, which is eternal and ongoing.
The articles call true truth eternal and ongoing truth.
Right. So the second we put a fence around our knowledge, we stop reflecting the very nature of the truth we claim to follow. We become like historians of a past revelation instead of participants in a living, breathing one. The flow just stops.
So it all begins by deconstructing that container of certainty. You have to stay open, hungry, excited for the more.
That intellectual posture, that humility, is the absolute prerequisite for the next stage.
Which is the radical shift in the concepts themselves that we're about to get into in Section 2. It's a move from the need for more truth to understanding the nature of our inherent truth.
Precisely. Once you're okay with not knowing everything, you can finally hear the truth about who you actually are.
Right. So if Section 1 was about, breaking down the rigid walls of our thinking, Section 2 is about what pours in to fill that space.
The new substance.
Yeah, the revelation of our true nature, our original identity, and this radical redefinition of what sin even is. It all starts with a foundational belief from Ecclesiastes 7.29.
That we were brought here upright, holy, righteous, and one.
That is a direct frontal assault on the whole idea of original sin.
It is. The traditional view starts us off in deficit, right? We're born flawed, separated, broken. Dr. K's approach starts us at fullness. We began whole.
And to back this up, she goes to a really crucial linguistic insight. It's about the Aramaic language, which was Jesus's original language. And this is where the pivot gets really radical.
This is a huge point because it challenges centuries of interpretation that have been layered on top of the text, through Greek and Latin and English translations.
So what does the Aramaic say?
The articles are emphatic about this. The Aramaic never refers to a corrupted Adamic nature that we supposedly inherited when we were born.
Wow, that is a massive theological pivot point.
It's huge because it removes the entire basis for the guilt and shame that a lot of religious systems are, frankly, built on.
So instead of inheriting some kind of spiritual defect, what does the Aramaic present?
It always presents us as one, as never having been separate from the Father. That feeling of being alienated, that sense of being enemies of God in our mind.
It's not an objective fact about us.
No, it's a cognitive error. It's a conceptual infection that's been passed down, not a spiritual defect we were born with.
The psychological relief of that must be just enormous for people who come from systems built on inherent depravity.
It's life-changing.
Because if separation is just a state of mind, then the whole idea of redemption changes. You don't need to be, fixed to ransom.
You just need to be reminded.
Right.
The goal shifts completely. You're not trying to bridge some cosmic gap anymore. You're just trying to correct a conceptual misalignment in your own head.
And that misalignment, that's what brings us right to her reinterpretation of sin.
This is the critical juncture.
We have to define sin singular, not as a bad action, but as something else entirely.
It's a failure of identity. The Greek word she uses is hamartia, which we all know literally means missing the mark.
Right.
But she takes that definition so much further. The concept of sin, hamartia, is fundamentally mistaken identity. It is believing you are something less than or separate from the holy, righteous being you have always eternally been.
So the root problem isn't what you do, it's what you believe about who you are.
Yes. And this is so vital for you, the listener, to really grasp. The sins, plural, the actual bad behaviors, they are just the actions you take when that mistaken identity is embraced and believed.
So if I believe I'm defined by, say, scarcity and separation,
then your actions will inevitably be defined by striving and fear and conflict. It's unavoidable.
This completely inverts the traditional way of thinking, which says you do bad things, sins, and that makes you a bad person.
A sinner, right. Her teaching insists on the opposite. Believing you are separate and flawed, that's the sin, the mistaken identity, and that is the cause. The bad actions, the sins, are just the effect.
It's a behavioral loop.
It is. The source puts it very simply. What one beholds, he will outpicture or act like. We always act like the one we believe ourselves to be.
So if I behold myself as this struggling, constantly failing human,
you will outpicture struggle and failure. But if you can behold yourself as upright, holy, and pure, then your behavior will just naturally start to line up with that divine reality.
So the focus shifts from constantly trying to police your own behavior, which is exhausting and, let's be honest, usually fails, to this deep internal work of self-realization. If you get the identity right, the behavior just sort of takes care of itself spontaneously.
And to really anchor this idea of our inherent uncorrupted nature, she does a deep dive into James 1.21, looking at it through that Aramaic lens again.
And in humility, receive the implanted word, which is the salvation of your souls.
That word implanted, That's the linchpin for this whole section.
Okay, so let's break down the words here like the articles do. First, receive. It doesn't mean getting something new, like a gift you didn't have before.
Exactly. To receive here is defined as to take unto oneself that which has always eternally been ours.
It's an act of acceptance, not acquisition.
It is. It's like a prince who's been living his whole life as a pauper, and suddenly he receives the news of his birthright. He doesn't become royalty in that moment.
He just accepts the reality of who he was all along.
Right. He accepts the royal nature that was always there. And that word implanted just seals the deal.
It means to be firmly set or deeply fixed.
Yes, it refers to that which we came here with. It's not something we acquire later. It's our spiritual DNA. It's the blueprint of oneness that was fixed in us from before the foundation of the world universe.
So holiness, righteousness, oneness, they aren't goals you have to strive for.
They're realities you have to realize. And salvation, in this context, is simply the process of waking up to and embracing that implanted truth.
But doesn't this run the risk of, I don't know, a kind of spiritual narcissism? If I'm already perfect, why should I bother trying to grow or change at all?
That is a crucial question. And the answer is in the nature of that realization. Dr. K would argue that the drive to grow doesn't come from fear of failure.
It's not motivated by a deficit.
No, it comes from the natural, expansive drive of the divine nature that you've realized within you. When you truly realize you're holy, you are naturally, effortlessly driven to express that holiness.
Just like a fruit tree effortlessly makes fruit.
Exactly. The effort is only required when you're operating from the mistaken identity.
So the message of this section is really this powerful and kind of restful call. We just need to receive and embrace the eternal truth about ourselves, a truth that always was and is.
It completely takes apart the psychological pressure cooker of performance-based religion.
And that realization is the perfect transition to section 3. Because if we accept this implanted eternal identity,
Then life is no longer a spiritual struggle. It becomes a spontaneous, effortless expression of that truth.
Okay, so we're moving into Article 3, which is all about the practical application. It's titled, We Are Who We Are. And Dr. K starts by really hammering this shift in divine measurement.
Right. Father does not measure us by behavior, so why do we? That provides such clarity for you, the listener.
It really is the final nail in the coffin for the performance mindset, isn't it?
It is. If God, the ultimate source, the ultimate judge, whatever word you want to use, sees us as holy, righteous, and I one,
The way he brought us forth in his image and likeness.
then the only obstacle left is our own internal judgment, our own self-criticism based on what we perceive as failure. Our job is just to get our internal perception to line up with the objective divine reality.
And that alignment, that is the key to what she calls spontaneous spiritual living.
Yes. Because if we always act like the person we believe ourselves to be, then the only way to live effortlessly from the inside out
Without all the striving and the guilt and the discipline.
is to know, really know, our eternal identity.
So knowing the truth of who you are is the actual mechanism for freedom.
It is. Freedom isn't just like a legal declaration of not guilty. It's the spontaneous expression of an identity that inherently is good and whole and connected.
Yeah.
The moment you realize your oneness, you just naturally stop acting like you're separate.
She gets really practical with this by re-examining James 4.8, which says, Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands and purify your hearts.
And the traditional reading often focuses on cleansing the hands first, right?
Yeah.
The outward actions.
The behavior.
But the order of realization here is absolutely vital. Dr. Gay clarifies that to purify ourselves is first to realize who Father made us to be.
So the purification is an internal belief adjustment. It's letting go of the mistaken identity.
And the external cleansing, the clean hands, that just follows. So how do we draw near to Father in this model?
We draw near by seeing our oneness.
Right. If you're already one, drawing near isn't about crossing a physical or cosmic distance.
It's about closing a perceptual gap in your own mind.
And once that perceptual gap is closed by realizing your eternal identity, the Source says, other things which will follow naturally just happen. The effortless actions follow the core realization.
This process of self-realization then allows her to tackle what is, for many, the most mysterious and confusing book in the Bible. Revelation.
And she interprets it symbolically, connecting it directly to the individual's internal journey happening right now.
Okay, so let's get into the symbolic marriage of the Lamb in Revelation 19. This is an amazing example of making an objective truth subjective.
So the marriage is connected to the wife making herself ready.
And that wife is a symbol for something inside of us.
Yes, it symbolizes our feminine principal soul bride realizing her oneness. The whole process she's describing is the objective oneness. That's the eternal established fact that we are one with the divine.
Being made subjective.
Exactly. Being felt and realized and integrated into our conscious experience, which she calls our virgin consciousness.
So the realization is the marriage ceremony.
It is, and she anchors this whole idea of conscious subjective realization with some pretty fascinating numerology from Revelation 14, where the 144,000 are mentioned.
Okay, we need to slow down here and walk through the math on this because this can be confusing. How does the number 144,000 relate to consciousness?
Right. So Dr. K uses a specific kind of numerological reduction. You take the number 144,000, but you focus on the core digits, 1, 4, and 4.
Okay, 1, 4, and 4.
And when you add those together, 1 plus 4, you get the number 9.
And what does the number 9 signify in this kind of mystical context?
The number 9 is almost always associated with completion, culmination, and often with consciousness itself.
Yeah.
The final stage of manifestation. So for her, this links the 144,000 who are often seen as, the perfected ones.
It links them directly to a state of perfected consciousness.
Yes, which means attaining that state isn't about a literal head count or waiting for some external event. It's about achieving a state of heart awareness.
It makes the whole process profoundly internal. It's this subjective marriage of our masculine aspect, the objective truth, the spirit, and our feminine aspect, the soul, consciousness, the part that receives.
And this internal lens just shapes her entire view of the book of Revelation. It's not some prediction of external doom and gloom. It's a manual for internal transformation.
She offers 3 ways to look at the book, right?
Yeah.
The first is that it's fundamentally symbolic, which is pointed to by the word signified in the very first chapter.
Right. Second, if you really insist on a literal external timeline, she argues that Revelation was already fulfilled historically in 70 AD with the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple.
Which effectively removes all the modern-day anxiety about trying to predict future apocalyptic events.
It does. But the third way, and this is the most important for you, the listener, is that from a spiritual standpoint, it is supremely practical, and it is happening now in our lives. It's the ongoing process of realizing our internal oneness.
Not waiting for some future world-ending scenario.
No.
And that brings us to the ultimate application. What is the result of all this conscious, heartfelt realization?
Effortless spiritual living. Alignment. As we contemplate and meditate our one and only in Christed identity, spiritual life it happens naturally.
You stop working for an identity and you start living from it.
In this internal spiritual marriage where heaven and earth, the objective truth and the subjective experience are married together as one inside of us, that's the spiritual meaning of eating, of partaking of the super supper of the Lamb.
It's the constant, conscious ingestion of our eternal whole reality. And this isn't a checklist, is it? It's not like you do step 1 and then move on to step 2. The source material really emphasizes the simultaneous nature of it all.
Absolutely. The contemplation, the beholding, the purification, the drawing near, the spiritual supper. Dr. K insists all of these things happen simultaneously as we consistently behold our one and only eternal identity.
So the consistent beholding is the one key action.
It's the action that generates the effortless spiritual reality.
Which requires this continuous active choice to maintain that consciousness, that number 9 realization, over the old ingrained habit of believing you're separate.
It does. It requires vigilance, but it's a vigilance that comes from love and realization, not from fear and performance. It's a total shift from asking, what do I have to do to be good?
To asking, how can I better express the goodness that I already am? That was a really tremendous deep dive into the architecture of this spiritual deconstruction. We've covered ideas that I think for a lot of listeners could completely overhaul their understanding of, of everything.
We can probably boil it down to 3 major shifts we found in Dr. K. Fairchild's articles. The first one is that intellectual necessity of endless childlike curiosity.
Right, actively deconstructing certainty, holding truth loosely, so that ongoing eternal revelation can keep flowing.
The second is that radical recognition of our eternal implanted identity. We were brought here upright, holy, righteous, and one.
Mm.
And that's backed up by the Aramaic context, which kind of bypasses the whole idea of a corrupted nature.
And third, the application of all that. Sin gets redefined. It's not moral failure. It's hamartia, mistaken identity. It's believing we're separate.
And the behavior, the sins, just naturally follow the identity we choose to embrace.
So for you, the learner, this framework really offers a clear path out of the anxiety of performance-based religion.
It does. If your standing with the divine is based purely on who you eternally are and not on what you do, all that striving just ceases. And this effortless living, rooted in self-knowledge, can begin.
It's a powerful invitation to just rest in your being, isn't it? Instead of constantly chasing a status you already have.
But you have to remember, the whole framework starts with taking apart what you think you already know for sure. We have to keep coming back to that first principle, deconstructing certainty.
So based on that stress on ongoing revelation and that conscious realization symbolized by the number 9, we want to leave you with a final provocative thought.
If you are committed to holding truth loosely so the Spirit can continue to speak,
What specific area of your life right now requires the deconstruction of certainty, that comfortable assumption that you've arrived before any radical reconstruction can truly begin?
something to dwell on as you continue your own journey of deep discovery.
Keep diving deep.